So I know it's been a while since I posted here, and a lot has changed over the last year. I'm no longer in my pressure washing business, which I'm going to be getting into. But this past year has probably been one of the most chaotic, stressful, and insane years of my life, but also one of the most transformational and fun years as well. But I'm going to save that all for a different day. I'm going to be focusing on is just what happened with the business, why I decided to get out of it, what am I doing now, and what are my plans moving forward. So for those of you that don't know, my brother and I started a pressure washing business 5 years ago during the COVID pandemic lockdown. Right, I was a sophomore in college at the time. We all got sent home like the rest of the country, and nothing was going on. So what else do you do when you're bored at home and you got nothing going on? You start doing chores, right? So we were reorganizing things, painting the basement, and just doing things around the house to be productive and feel good. And we were getting pretty antsy, pretty bored, my brother and I. And my dad, he pitched us the idea one night at dinner. He was like, after painting the basement, he's like, you guys could make a lot of money if you just did that same thing what you did here for other people. And we're like, that could be an idea. But we didn't really want to paint, and we didn't know shit about painting. So we kind of just let that fizzle out. But then he asked us to pressure wash the house one day. And that's when the light bulb went off. We're like, okay, pressure washing seems like it's pretty easy. There's a lot of dirty houses in the area. We're up in the Northeast, so a lot of algae and mildew and that kind of crap. And, we could probably make some pretty good money doing this. So long story short, we take the little crappy pressure washer that we have in our shed. We try to do our own house, don't really succeed too well. And we start the business, right? We start doing jobs for friends and family. No idea what we're doing. We go to Home Depot, get like another pressure washer. We probably went through 6 of them because we didn't know that you had to turn on the water before you turn on the machine. That's how uneducated and just, kind of dumb we were with these types of things. Like, we've never touched a pressure washer in our lives. But we just got out there, we fucked it up, and we figured it out. And that first year in business, we ended up doing that first summer, because I ended up going back to college in August. But that first summer in business, we did about $40,000 in revenue. And for a dude that was working at a bike shop prior and has never seen that kind of money before, it was pretty eye-opening, right? Going back to college with a decent amount of beer money was pretty incredible. And I remember it was the first day that we had like 2 real jobs for like 2 real customers, and like not just friends and family, and it took us about like 7 or 8 hours. There were 2 like kind of like surface cleaning jobs. It was just my brother and I. We had a bunch of crap thrown in the back of his old 2007 Honda CRV, the 2 pressure washers, a bunch of hoses, bleach, all that crap. And we were on our way home from the 2 jobs. They both went well, no issues. Made $900 that day cash. And we were just laughing our asses off because like we couldn't believe it. Like, prior to that, I've never seen that kind of money. It would take me like 2 or 3 weeks to make $900 in my job. And we did that in one day, so we were just like hooked from that point on. We felt like we literally just robbed these people, but we provided a service, right? So year 2, we ended up hitting 6 figures. Our first 100,000, I think it was like $105,000 that next summer. I came back from school. We started up again in spring. My brother started doing some jobs because he was already home. He was already graduated. He started doing some jobs early that spring, and then we gradually grew from there. Our 4th year in business is when my brother went on to pursue something else, and I was left with the business, and I was kind of excited about it because it was like, okay, now I can kind of just take all the money for myself and reinvest it into the business and do what I want to do with the business, which is cool. Obviously, it was a bit tough not having him around, and that was definitely a big adjustment because now I had to like outsource his position and whatnot. But I hired a virtual assistant to do all of our back-end customer service admin work. And then I also hired a technician. And that 4th year in business, we did just about $300,000 in revenue. And that was like the top revenue that we've ever done annually. And it was pretty cool to do that on my own with kind of a little team around me, where I actually started growing a business and I was taking myself out of the field work. So that was pretty cool. And then last year was our 5th year in business. I had to rehire a new VA, rehire a technician, And it was basically just the same thing over and over again. Like every year, like I'd have to rebuild the business and rebuild the truck and whatnot. And it was definitely very tough, right? And I absolutely loved this business. Well, I loved the idea of the business, and being that we were seeing success and we were growing, like I was excited about that, but I was never 100% passionate about the business. And I never saw like a long-term vision for this business. One day we'd have 10 trucks, 20 guys doing a couple mil. Like that's not really something I ever wanted to do. That just more so seemed like a logistical nightmare. So I always saw this as a stepping stone business. And now being, last summer, our 5th year in business, I was 23 at the time. And I had to rebuild basically the business from the ground up again, hire new employees, new VA, new technician, rebuild the truck, all these things. I was starting to get pretty sick of it. And prior to that, last winter, I was starting to do some coaching online where I was helping other guys start and grow their businesses. That gave me this whole introduction into the online space. And I started to realize how much more leverage there is with online businesses. And I always knew that the pressure washing wouldn't be like my long-term thing, but I just didn't know what I wanted to do. So, I was doing the coaching. I got a couple clients. It was cool. I was having fun with it. But at the end of the day, I wasn't like really fulfilled with it. And I wasn't too passionate about it because I wasn't excited about pressure washing. And when you're not excited about something and you're not constantly learning, I felt like I didn't have the knowledge and I just wasn't excited about it enough to the point where I can give people the most value possible in terms of my clients, right? As we entered it back into spring of last season, 2024, and I had to start building up the business again and doing all that. Like I kind of just let the coaching thing fizzle out. But I realized that like I still wanted to be in the online space in some way. And I wanted to get into a business that was much higher leverage and something that I was actually excited about, which the pressure washing now, going on our 5th year in business, I was not so excited about it. And I was making decent money, but for being in business 5 years, I felt that if I was in a different vehicle, I could be doing much more and just having much more leverage. So I had a buddy last June. He sold his business. He had some other service business, but I was chatting with him, and he put me in touch with his M&A advisor that helped him sell his business. And I just had a quick conversation with him just to see like, what my options even could be if I wanted to sell the business. And after having a conversation with him and someone outside of myself telling me that it is actually realistic that I can sell this business and get somewhat of a decent number for it, from then on I was like, that's it, I'm selling the business. So from there I decided, okay, I'm going to sell the business, but what am I going to do? Am I going to start a coaching business? What would I start it around? I'm not going to start around pressure washing. I don't want to do that. I already did it. Not something I want to do, right? So I was thinking for months, and of course this decision took a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of research. But I realized I liked the sales aspect of the coaching business, right? I wasn't good at the time. And, I realized how important that skill is to just be able to have effective conversations with people, be able to consult people in a way that you're able to change their mindset and their perspective and the way that they take actions based on a conversation that you're having with them that they would never be able to do, without that conversation, right? And just being able to genuinely help people. So I realized, sales is an incredibly high leverage and great skill to know, not just for being able to make money and as much money as you want, but also just being able to start other businesses as well in the future. So I knew going into whatever it is I do next, I either need to build a very valuable skill and get really good at one thing, as opposed to just having a bunch of soft skills that I learned running the business, or it needs to be high leverage, whatever I do. And sales kind of checked off both of those boxes. It's very high leverage. There's a lot of opportunities in what you can do with sales, especially high ticket online. There's a lot of different avenues that you can go down once you get good at sales. And once you really build up that kind of base of being good, having a solid network and a brand and all these things, you can pretty much do anything from there. And I started realizing this, and I was like, all right, this really checks all the boxes. So from then on, all of last summer was just dedicated to how do I get into sales and how do I sell the business. And long story short, I went to my first sales program in July. and then got into my first role in September, all while running my business, managing my employees, and also trying to sell the business while renovating my apartment, which I'm in now, which I bought and closed on in June. So there's a lot going on, and like I said, I'll get to that in another video. But it has been absolutely hectic. And then we also had our Christmas lighting season, which my employee ended up leaving in like October. So then I was basically doing all of the jobs myself while also getting into high ticket sales, being in my first company on my first role, and then also trying to sell the business. And I didn't end up selling the business until March of, this past March. So it's just about to be June now, a couple months ago. That's when we closed on it. But in that whole period from like June to March, we had a couple of deals in the works. They fell through. And now this company that did end up buying my business was a company that we had a good relationship with. They subbed us out a lot of work, and they are a multi-million-dollar franchise branch. In all honesty, I didn't get like a crazy amount for the business, but I got a little bit up front, and then I now have revenue share over the next 3 years, which I negotiated for that third year. But we closed in March. I'm completely out of the business now. I do a little bit of consulting for them on the side just to help them get everything transitioned over. And if they need help with anything, I can help them out, train their sales guys, dial in the processes, all that stuff. And we had a whole transition period that was a little bit more intense back in April. But now it's just been full-time, high-ticket sales online. And I'm going to be getting into kind of all of the details of everything that I am doing in later videos. But that's what's going on now. And I really just wanted to start documenting this journey as authentically and as raw as possible, because there's a lot of bullshit out there. So just wanted to share my thought process as to why I got into this and what's kind of been happening and kind of what's going to be going on from this point on. So I'm no longer going to be talking about pressure washing. And I know this channel has pretty much evolved into a pressure washing channel just because that's what I've been doing for the last 5 years. However, that was never what I really wanted it to be. I always just wanted this to be just a straight up log of my ventures. But that is transitioning. No more pressure washing stuff. I'm sorry. If that is what you're here for, then you can unsubscribe. But if you're interested in following along and seeing kind of what the next step is here, then I'd be happy to have you along. But really, I see this phase of skill acquisition and getting into sales as really just exactly that, just gaining skills, getting really good at one thing that's very high leverage, building out my brand, focusing on my content and just sales, and then seeing where that takes me. So I'm going to be documenting this process as honestly and as authentically as possible. If that's something that you are interested in following along, then I'd be happy to have you. If not, then I wish you the best of luck. And that's pretty much it. Cheers.